Blessings, good evening on this hot New Year's Eve. In some parts of Victoria it was up to 40 degrees centigrade today, which is a good test of anyone's endurance. New Year's Eve is traditionally a time we come together to practice. Of course, this year COVID is spreading fast, so we went online for the lay community to watch and participate. But the Dhamma is still the same. The Buddha that we follow is still the same. The Sangha that we take refuge in is still the same. And that surely is the value of a refuge. When you face changing conditions in the world all the time, changing conditions in your own life, and then changing conditions in society, the economy, the weather, the environment. And we need something to anchor the mind, steady the mind, and give us some guidance, where to go, what to do, some wisdom. So anyone who's encountered the teachings of the Buddha and found that they provide some of that wisdom, then we say they're a very fortunate person. To be born, encounter the Buddhist teachings, have the chance to hear and practice them is the greatest good fortune. So as we wish each other New Year, Happy New Year, then that's, in my view, that's what we're wishing each other, the chance to continue to practice Dhamma in whatever way we can, to continue on our path safely, securely, to continue to have the opportunities to practice in this new year and to grow in the Dhamma, in our understanding of truth, particularly the Four Noble Truths, to understand the nature or characteristics of suffering, to understand the cause and put effort into abandoning the cause, the craving, the attachment, the delusion, and to realize cessation of suffering, if only briefly, but also with the aim for ultimate transcendence of suffering through cultivating the path, which is what we're doing right now, right here. We're cultivating the Buddhist path of practicing mindfulness, reflecting on Dhamma, keeping precepts and so on. Perhaps it's a good reflection just to think, if we didn't have the Buddhist teachings, where would we be? And Buddhism doesn't have a monopoly on the goodness in the world or the wisdom in the world, of course. There are many other wise teachers and people doing good who maybe have not encountered the Buddhist teachings. But for many, it's the completeness of the Buddhist teachings which attracts them. A very clear, well-explained path that can be put to the test every day. We say as bhikkhus, as monks, we have the bhikkhu system of training, we have the monastic training, which is very complete indeed, and ideal, the ideal situation for practicing meditation, living a life that channels all your energies, physical and mental energy, into the practice. For the laity, though, we still have exactly the same teachings and pathway open to us. We have to balance our expectations, because in the lay life you're more involved in the world, with families, work, society. So you have to learn how to incorporate or bring these teachings into your life. Look after yourself, and perhaps look after those you're immediately responsible for. So family, those who are close to you. That's already hard enough, isn't it? If you have one or two children, say you're an adult parent, you've got one or two children, just to look after them well is already a huge task. We have to devote so much energy, time, care and attention to them. If you've got two kids, then there's always a chance of arguments. Just to keep two kids happy, harmonious, is quite a task. But that's what, if that's your life situation, if you do have a family or starting one, that's probably your number one priority, isn't it? In your practice. You make that part of your practice. Nowadays we're inundated with information about the world, not just COVID and the pandemic, but every other aspect of life. So it's very easy to lose track of what our priorities are. But our number one priority is keep our own mind with the Dhamma, and then help those who are immediately close to us, so family, children, friends, parents. To try and fix all the world's problems in one go is a huge task, and if we haven't fixed our own problems, it's quite difficult. And so taking on the world is often the recipe for getting burnt out, disappointed. So the Buddha encouraged us to begin with ourselves first. If we can resolve some of our own inner conflicts and inner suffering, then we're in a better position to help others and give more to others. It doesn't mean to say we can't have the aspiration for others to be free from suffering. As we just chanted, we can wish all beings to be free from anxiety, stress, suffering, pain, and to preserve their happiness and success. We can wish that, but we have to moderate that wish with the reality that we can probably only affect ourselves and those who are close to us. And so we have to accept that when we hear all the news about the world, about pandemic and the difficulties and struggles of people. You have the basic wish that may they be free from suffering, but very limited in what you can do. Whereas we have a lot of opportunity to improve our own situation and those around us. So the Buddha encouraged us to turn inwards first, to start with ourselves, which is why the cultivation of the path of meditation, mindfulness, calm, insight is so central to the teachings, because that's where we learn about the world. So coming up to the new year now, what do you want for your new year? What do you want for the people you know and love? What do you want for the world in the new year? It's a time to reflect on that, maybe come back to your basic and find your basic values, beliefs, views on things which you've developed so far. Come back and see if you're still following your basic faith in the Buddha's teachings and practice that he passed on to us. As we know, many of us, we're Buddhists in name. When people ask us if you have a religion or a belief, you might answer Buddhist. A lot of Buddhists are too shy to even say Buddhist. It doesn't really matter, it's just a name, but if it's only a name, it's not enough. We're practicing to actually bring these teachings into our heart, into our lives, and to work with them, train with them. To work with them is the way Ajahn Mahabua used to describe the practice. You have to work. It's the job of a meditator. One training involves effort and learning and developing skills. So for the new year, we are aspiring to continue to develop those skills and have those opportunity to develop our hearts in a good way, both for ourselves and others. It's also a time to reflect on our good fortune and appreciate the good from the past, the supportive conditions we've had. And it's a good meditation on a night like tonight. Spend some time recollecting the good things in your life that have come your way so far since you were born. The good fortune of having parents who looked after you, cared for you, the opportunities that have come your way from education, friends, teachers, the society you live in. If you're living in a peaceful place, that's great good fortune. Unfortunately, there are some people in the world, they have to walk down the street careful because they might get attacked, or people are in such economic hardship that they don't have electricity or running water, for example. Many things that most of us in Australia just take for granted that some people in the world don't have. So to reflect on that, the immediate good things that have happened to you, come your way, and then just in general seeing the good fortune of living in a place where you have access to healthcare. Even though we've got a pandemic, we've still got a healthcare system, even though it's struggling. So it's also a time to think of all those who are helping in the healthcare system, because they're working super hard at a time when normally you'd hope for them to have a bit of holiday. But the fact that we have a healthcare system is something amazing. It's a sign of a society that has some healthy principles behind it, that we're willing to set up a system that will care for each other. May not be perfect, but it's there. That's our great good fortune. And when you meditate on these kind of themes, reflecting on the good fortune, appreciating the good in others, it brings you a sense of well-being, lightens the mind, brightens the mind when we tend towards the negative, the worries, the frustrations of living in the world. It tends to energize the mind, doesn't it? When you think of the help you've received, and even just noticing the help other people get from those around them, noticing the goodness in the world, brightens the mind and it energizes the mind. That energy is vital. It comes up and brings you, helps you to be more active in your practice, to try harder basically, because you can see the goodness of it. We have to remind ourselves of that sometimes, because our own mind drags us down so easily. Get caught into inertia or even depression, disappointment. We just conducted an online retreat, and there was one participant saying that reflecting in this way, they had a great wave of gratitude come up for their parents. And so often we ignore our parents or those who have helped us, or take them for granted, or sometimes even turn against them, the very people who have helped us. But when your mind tends to relax as you're meditating and more wholesome thoughts come up, we tend to notice those who have helped us. So this person was saying they finished their meditation and went off to see their mother and thank their mother for all the help and support and love they've received. And as all mothers would normally respond, the mum just thought they were being silly. Because it's automatic, isn't it? If you're a parent, it tends to be just automatic, the giving, the sharing, the taking care of your children. So if the children turn around and say thank you, it can stump you or stop you in your tracks. Yeah, why are they saying that? I've had that same experience, and my parents thought, what's he up to? Does he want something? Because it's unusual when kids do that. But whether you say it or you just think it and feel it, it's such a wholesome opening up of your heart when you have gratitude to those who have helped. And particularly parents, but not just parents. It can be close friends who've helped you at times when you're in trouble or whatever. Close friends and teachers. Teachers who've given you support and freely given you instruction or support when there's no obligation. Recollecting this brings us great happiness, opens up the mind, counters that habit of negativity, cynicism that's so easy to come up and that we gather from other people all the time as well. And we have to do it with ourselves as well. Recognize, sometimes sit down, recognize the good that we've done so far in our life. There's plenty more we have to do in the new year, but we also have to recognize the good we've done in this past year. Sit down and think about it. Maybe you've practiced dana with different people in different ways, practiced charity, helped. Can be because of the lockdowns, maybe you just did things online or in very kind of low-key ways, just helping your family, friends, or supporting the Sangha or other charities. But think back this year, what have you done? That's something to rejoice in. This word anumodana, it means rejoicing in the good that's been done. But first you have to recognize the good that has been done. You have to clear the dark clouds of your mind, settle the mind down, and then really recollect with some clarity what you've done or what you've experienced, what you've witnessed through this last year. And there'll be plenty of good things that you missed or overlooked or just forgotten about. And the idea isn't to build up a conceit in yourself that you're a good person, better than other people. And that is one danger. The idea is simply to witness and recognize what is the good that you've done and that's been done for you as well. And just an honest, open appraisal or witnessing of that. It's also a time to recognize where we've gone wrong maybe. We may also have made mistakes, harmed ourselves, harmed others in smaller or even greater ways. But as you establish mindfulness, the idea is to be able to look at your experience objectively and see both the good and the bad. What you've done that was supportive and maybe should be continued in the new year, and what needs to be abandoned, given up, changed. And to do that, you need to bring that focus to the present moment and be able to examine your experience, your memories, your thoughts, and what's been going on from a place of peace and clarity rather than just reacting with emotions. So, judging yourself, this was good, that was bad. In order to progress, we have to be able to pause, look, and learn from our experience. And that's part of meditation as well. And then to set your goal for the new year. Having looked back at the old year and seeing what was good, what was bad, what needs to be improved, what can be continued, what needs to be abandoned, then you move into the new year and set some goals to do more of the good stuff more dana, keep the precepts, the sila, be more mindful. You could do something very simple like, say, for the next year, 2022, I'm going to undertake the 5 precepts and determine not to deliberately kill anything, even a fly or a mosquito that bothers me, or pests that invade my house, or when people get angry, I'm not going to break anything or physically do anything to express anger. That could be a plan, a resolution for the next year. And if you really see the value of it, then just see if you can do it. Put it into action. For a whole year, can you undertake not to kill or harm another living being? And see if you can do it. It seems quite simple. In most days we probably aren't consciously, deliberately harming anybody. But still, to take it on as a practice and be even more mindful, so particularly with small creatures that come your way. Taking on a single precept can be quite a teaching. If you're more experienced in the practice, well, maybe all 5 precepts is quite doable for you. But if there's anywhere where you find it hard, well, maybe that's where you need to aim for in this coming year, to change some aspects of your behavior, give up the unwholesome, give up the bad habits. If you're a drinker, a gambler, if you like to look at online porn, if you're one who loses temper and scolds other people and shouts and loses your temper in different situations, these are the places we're working on for the new year. Maybe uncomfortable thinking of this stuff, but if you really want to change, that's what we have to do. And as you meditate, you also notice it coming up, don't you? Some of the guilt, the regrets over things we've said and done, we don't feel easy when we're not in line with virtuous conduct. So that's where you're learning. You see the regrets, the agitation, and you want to end that by just changing some ways. It's all doable because other people have done it, and you've probably done it already in your life, but maybe just to tidy it up or make your mind more firm in its commitment. When we do that ceremony of the 5 precepts, at the end the monk, me or some other monk, will be saying, Silena sukhatinyanti, silena bhokasampada, silena nibbutiyanti, tasama silang visotaye. Why do we try to live in a virtuous way? It's for our prosperity, our wealth and prosperity. You can take that on different levels. There's the material wealth. If you're keeping the precepts, generally you're protecting whatever wealth you've earned, you've got, you've inherited, you've been given. Because what tends to risk our wealth and damage it and get us into trouble is when we don't keep precepts. We take risks and it comes back on us. We're not careful, and of course we create negative karma when we're not keeping the precepts. So generally keeping the precepts makes you wealthy in the long run. Materially wealthy, but even more important is the spiritual wealth inside, the happiness of a mind free from regret, the mindfulness, the faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and the understanding of suffering and how to end and avoid more stress and suffering. Keeping the precepts is a way of letting go of suffering, ending it. Silena sukhatinyanti, for our happiness. People who keep the precepts are happy. It's as simple as that. Nobody makes you keep the precepts. You have to see the value of it and then use them as skillful training rules, training guidelines in your life to help channel your behavior in a way that will not cause you regret or pain, guilt. So they're for your happiness. You can sleep easily at night if you keep the precepts. You meet people, you talk to them at ease because you're not thinking or going out to harm them in any way, take advantage of them. you're mindful, you're clear, it naturally brings up kindness and compassion. If you are practicing metta and you're wishing the world to be at peace this new year, well, taking on 5 precepts as guidelines will bring that about. At the very least for you, and almost certainly it will affect the people around you in a good way. When you meet someone with precepts, you generally feel at ease, happy with them. When I used to live in Thailand, we'd visit some old monk who was considered to be very venerable, and you go and you feel very happy because there's somebody who's kept the precepts for many, many years. You don't imagine them physically or verbally harming anybody. They don't steal, they don't commit acts of sexual misconduct, they don't get drunk. There's just a simple happiness about them that makes you, it's almost infectious in a good way. The good infections are the happiness you get from associating with good people who have practiced and kept virtuous conduct for many, many years. And if they meditate as well, it sort of doubles the happiness. Because what is meditation doing? It's helping us let go of the causes of stress, greed, anger, delusion. It's for our well-being, our happiness, our peace of mind. It may take effort, of course, but when repeatedly done, like the precepts, your sense of contentment and ease just grows. And you can use that as you have to face the challenges of the world, like COVID and things. You face COVID with a practice of sila and meditation, maybe it hardly bothers you too much. It's inconvenient, it's challenging, but maybe your mind is totally at peace with pandemics and lockdowns and all the difficulties it's brought. Your mind can still be at peace within it because you have a foundation of practice. And with meditation you gain the wisdom, the understanding of what is suffering, what you have to do to end it, because you're seeing your own mind where suffering arises. Where you cling to negative states with this sense of self, you become frustrated, you become disappointed, you become unhappy in different ways. When you recognize what's going on, then you have this chance to let go. Be more mindful and let go of suffering. And suffering is just suffering. There's the suffering you can't do much about, just some aches and pains in the body or illness if you get ill. The tiredness of earning a living, looking after a family, living in the world. There's some suffering you can't do much about. You just have to be patient with. But if you understand, you've trained your mind, you know it's just suffering. That's just normal. It's part of life. Don't think too much about it. Don't make a big deal out of it, because it's just the kind of suffering just to be patient with and accept. If you can minimize it with various things, various ways, seeking some comfort, medication when you're ill, fine. But there'll always be some pain and discomfort in life, because that's part of life. So just accept it. Then there's the kind of suffering you actually have to work to go beyond, the self-made suffering. I'm a self-made sufferer. When we attach to all the worries and the frustrations and the disappointments, when we got so much wanting that we're always getting annoyed and losing our temper because we're not getting what I want. This is all the self-inflicted, self-made suffering that we can let go of through our efforts in the practice. That doesn't need to be endured patiently, that needs to be let go of. Greed, selfishness, worry, anxiety is to be abandoned. We need to recognize it for what it is, teach ourselves to let go. And wisdom is, that understanding that helps us do that. You have to be able to understand that anxiety doesn't help your situation. I know it's easy to say, for me just to sit here and say this, but it's true, isn't it? If you're facing some difficulty, you're worried, you're waiting for a test to see if you've got COVID or something more serious, even cancer or kidney disease or diabetes or something, you're facing some challenge, You have to stop and say, anxiety and worry doesn't improve this situation. It actually makes it worse. And if it's something you don't yet know the outcome of, you have to accept that. You've sat an exam, you haven't had the result yet. You don't know what's going to happen. You have to wait and just accept you did your work before the exam. Now you just wait and see what result comes, and you have to accept the result. But the anxiety doesn't help. So much of our life is stressful because we make it stressful. We overthink things, we worry, we look at things from the negative side with negative expectations. What if I don't get it? What if this happens? What if that happens? And this is the untrained mind taking over. And this is exactly the kind of suffering the Buddha said we can remedy through practicing mindfulness, meditating. If you can turn to the breath sometimes, just calm your anxiety like that. Go to the breath. You're sitting in the doctor's waiting room, not sure what's going to happen. Do a bit of breathing meditation and you calm down, don't you? You can't sleep at night because of your worries. Sit there and just do some breathing meditation or some loving kindness meditation, and often you just quickly bring your mind back to a state of normality. And it's up to us to bring these practices into our life, and it can really help us. Reflecting on the changing nature of body and mind and the world helps us deal with the sufferings that come our way. Unfortunately, people do die. The people we love, they die. It happens. So reflect on this. Birth, aging, sickness and death. They're unpleasant, they're dukkha, they're not what we want, but they happen. It's going to happen to us. One day we will die. I always remember the time when I was with Lungta Mahabua, and there's a huge crowd of people and he's giving a talk, and one lady up the front is just crying and crying and crying to the point he couldn't talk anymore. It's too loud. So he stopped his Dhamma talk and said, "What's wrong?" And that's Dhamma as well, isn't it? Someone is suffering in front of you, so you just say, "Well, what's wrong?" And she said, "My son has just died." And of course, that's a terrible tragedy, a parent to lose their own son. Nobody would wish that on anyone. It's the worst kind of suffering, maybe, for a mother. So of course she was crying, upset. And Lungta just stopped and he said, "Have you considered you will also die?" And she said, "No, I've never thought of that." And she stopped crying and realized, there's more to it than just being caught up in the emotion of the loss and the separation. All of us have to face that same situation. So it was just enough words and a bit of metta as well. And he possibly gave her some metta in his samadhi as well. We don't know. And she suddenly stopped crying. It's like somebody sort of waking up from a bad dream, a nightmare. Of course, it didn't bring the son back. He was dead. She had to accept that. But her intoxication with her own mood of sadness and really wildly grief-stricken to the point where she's just screaming and crying, that faded away very quickly through the words of Dhamma, some goodwill, and bringing mindfulness to her. And this is what wisdom does. It brings you to the truth, calms your mind when it's maybe overwhelmed by suffering or emotion. And then you can see this is something that's just the way it is, isn't it? It's unfortunate, but it's the way it is. So this is a good time, end of year, beginning of new year, to let go of the past, focus on the present. You can make your aspirations for the future, but remember that it won't turn out quite like you imagine. Let go of your accumulated karma baggage of hates, personal hates of other people, all that negativity that weighs your mind down. This is the time to put the baggage down, let it go, bring up the aspiration for your own success and happiness in the practice and the success and happiness of others. And tonight we'll be practicing for a few hours more up until midnight, and we'll have the live stream on, certainly by 11:30 it will be on. And we'll do some parita chanting, auspicious chanting, and then bring in the new year and give you all a blessing. Really, the best blessing is learning the Dhamma and then practicing the Dhamma, isn't it? And learning to be your own refuge, finding peace and understanding in your own heart. Then you can be a refuge to others as well. But for now, I'll give you just this much teachings and wish you all well. And in a moment we will pause the live stream when we pay respects to the Triple Gem, and then we'll be back at around 11:30 for more chanting and a blessing for the new year. But for now, I'll leave the talk there.